welcome to a new YouTube video. If you're new around here, my name is Katie, I'm a full-time sketchbook artist, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing 6 different ideas for unlocking your sketchbook creativity. Now, I absolutely love working in sketchbooks. It's where basically, I would say 90% of my art is made in sketchbooks, and I love them. And I know that it's very easy to feel blocked and overwhelmed and just not sure where to start, or maybe you've been creating for a while and you just feel a little bit stumped. It's very normal as artists for us to go through these cycles, and sometimes we'll be feeling super duper inspired to create, and other times we won't want to touch our sketchbook at all. But sometimes I think it is helpful for us to push through these things. Obviously taking a break is really important, and I'm not negating that. But I also think sometimes we need to push through and push forward to create, because otherwise if we're waiting for inspiration to strike, it doesn't always happen. So for me, because I create in my sketchbooks all the time and create for my work, I've come up with a few different ways that I wanted to share with you to unlock that creativity and get you creating in your sketchbook. So without further ado, let's start with number 1. Okay, so the first one is to explore different mediums. Now obviously I am a little bit biased because I am a mixed media artist, but I really think there's a lot of creativity and exploration in this subject. Even if you're focused on one medium, so maybe you're a watercolour artist, I think there's a lot of exploration we can do there for adding things on top. Now you might find you don't like it, but sometimes it unlocks new ideas, and that's what I find. I absolutely love layering different supplies, and I love breaking the rules. I like seeing if something works on top of something else, and maybe combining watercolour and acrylic, even though technically they don't go together, but you can create totally different textures, and I might use both in a piece. You might discover that you love adding on pops of colour at the end with neocolours like I do, or you might prefer to do a pencil based and then maybe add paint on after. There's loads of different options, and I really think there's a whole wealth of ideas to explore when we try new mediums. Now obviously I'm not saying go out and buy all of the things, but I do think that there's a nice way that you can build things up or try different things individually. You can buy things open stock, or you can buy them second hand, which is something I love to do, to try and get that circle of art supplies when maybe it's not being used. You can pass it on to someone who can use them. You might have bought something and it's not worked out as you'd like, in which case you could do an art swap and maybe try and swap with someone else, but there's loads of different options, and I do think that there's something in just trying lots of different things. For me, that's where my excitement and joy come from, but also a lot of my ideas. For example, I've just bought some pastels and I want to combine that as backgrounds and maybe on top of my gouache just to see how things work. That's where I find my inspiration, and maybe it will be for you too. Number 2 is kind of tied in a little bit with number 1, and that is to use multiple sketchbooks. Now I use multiple sketchbooks because I use different mediums. I have some sketchbooks which are perfect for dry media and others that can only be used with my watercolours. And the other idea is to change your size. So I have some really big ones, I have some small ones, and I also have some homemade ones. So the options are endless when it comes to sketchbooks, but I really recommend having more than one. Having one kind of gives you a bit of pressure, and I know that having more than one means there's more pages to fill, but that's not a bad thing. I reach for sketchbooks depending on what I'm going to be using. If I'm going to be using watercolour and really wet media, then I'll go for a sketchbook which has a thicker stock, compared to a sketchbook like the Royal Talens, which I know works well with some gouache, or my brush pens, but I know I can't use watercolour in. So sometimes it depends on that, but if I'm really short on time, I'll go small. If I want to go really big and loose with brush strokes and really go wild, I'll go big. But having these options really helps enhance my creativity. I don't feel tied into one sketchbook. I feel like having the different options really encourages me to play. Really small sketchbooks are great for taking out and about with you, for popping in your bag and maybe just taking one pen. So that could encourage you to do some work outside, but loads of different ideas. So don't feel hemmed in by just one. As I mentioned, if you're trying lots of different supplies, it depends on the paper that you're using, and sometimes specific mediums don't work with specific paper, like I said with the watercolour, so it's important to try different ones and work out what works for you, and then have those options to play with. I have a huge pile, way too big to admit, of empty sketchbooks, but I'm okay with that because I know I will get to them. Sometimes I'll feel more inspired to fill one and not the other, and so my sketchbooks can be empty for months and months because I'm working in something else. And that's okay too. There's absolutely no timeline on filling your sketchbooks. If it takes you years and years, that's totally fine. The other thing is I don't stick to specific subjects in my sketchbook. It's totally up to you if you want to do that. You could keep one for just landscapes and another one for portraiture, for example, if that works for you. But you can also mix up all your different themes and subjects in your sketchbooks too, which is how I tend to work. But again, it's very subjective and totally up to you, so feel free to take this idea and run with it. If you've got your own ideas, then please do share them in the comments too. Okay, tip number 3 is challenges and prompt lists and ideas from other artists. Now, I absolutely love these. When I was doing my daily art challenges, it was the thing that really helped me to keep going. Creating every day isn't for everyone, so I'm not necessarily saying to do a challenge like that, but challenges in themselves can really encourage our creative ideas and make us want to work in our sketchbook. Over on Instagram, there are plenty of hosted art challenges with different prompts, different lengths as well, and loads of different ideas that you can jump off from narrative prompts or material ideas. Prompt lists are great because it gives you a starting point, so you can use that to begin and then let your imagination go wild for what you put on the page. Things like Patreons are also great. Obviously, I have my own and I'm not doing a plug here, but for me, I find I'm part of other Patreon communities too, and it's great sometimes to be told what to do. For example, with my drawing sessions, you just have to turn up. I've provided all of the references and the timers, and we just create together. So it's really helpful sometimes because I know it can be a little bit overwhelming knowing what to draw, and sometimes there are too many options, which is why Patreons and communities like that, it's really helpful for me, because sometimes you do just want to be told what to do, and so on days like that, it's really, really helpful. Other options, of course, are workshops and courses. There are loads of different ones online. There are art schools that will host them or individual artists that do courses on their sites. I've tried many and they have always really helped. It's really nice to get lessons from other artists and really try different styles, which is another thing which we're going to come on to next. But it's really helpful to get new ideas and maybe see things in different ways because of other artists sharing their work. Now, as I mentioned, there are lots of different challenges online, but you can also set personal challenges. So perhaps you want to improve trees, you could do a whole month on trees, and that's why I love doing themes on my Patreon too, because having that thread that goes through really helps us to focus on something. But it could be a personal challenge like 60 days of drawing outside, or taking a little sketchbook with you and drawing it whenever you're going out and about. But making it work for you is really important rather than having this pressure. So be sure to keep it fun and allow it to work within your life rather than feeling guilty if you haven't done it. Tip number 4 is being inspired by other artists. So of course I just mentioned workshops and courses, but there are also free options like books that you can study if you get them from the library, or museums you can visit to get ideas too. Studying other artists' work is really, really important, I think, for us to learn from. Now, I'm not saying copy all of their style and claim it as your own. I always recommend crediting an artist if you're doing a master study, of course, but I do find it really helpful to try drawing in another person's style. It's amazing what you can learn from studying one piece of art. And it doesn't have to be a master's work, but I do think that there's a lot that we can learn from there too. So when you're studying other artists' work, you can look at loads of different things. You can look at their brushstrokes, their colour palette, or their medium. I have a book on the Impressionists which I constantly reference because there's loads of different ones in here that I can get lots of inspiration from. With them in particular, I might want to do really small brushstrokes just to try and capture that energy, and maybe try some of their colour palettes too. Loads of different ideas, and it really can encourage us to work out our own style. You might find that you hate something and you know not to do that again, which is totally valid and something that we're learning. But likewise, you could learn something that you love. You could find a colour combination of perhaps 2 colours that you're going to explore more. Or maybe it's a subject that you haven't tried before, but you tried it out because you were copying someone else's work and you've learned from that. Taking these different ideas and inspirations can really help enhance our own work, but as I said, it does require crediting and obviously not passing it off as your own. But I do think there is a lot of merit in working from other people's work and learning what we like about it and what we don't. Tip number 5 is community. Working with other artists and creating alongside them is a huge, huge learning point for me. It's something that I've really started exploring lately when I've been doing the artist's way, and I found that connection with other artists has really made such a difference. I know it's not always possible, but even if you do it online, creating with others really, it kind of gives you a permission slip to just go and do whatever. I find myself on my Patreon drawing sessions being a lot more free and taking more risks because I just feel in a safe space with other artists. They encourage me to try different things, to try different combinations, just like when we're getting inspiration from them. When you're creating alongside them, it just enhances that. You can try their styles or their mediums and get that connection. But by sharing this interest, it's amazing what can happen. There are lots of places to meet online, whether that's just jumping on a Zoom call and creating together, or in real life. Urban sketching groups happen all over the world, and you might find there's a local one in your city. And that's really great. Even if you're not necessarily into urban sketching, you're meeting like-minded creators and other artists who are in your area. And so you could make friends there and then branch out and create your own little groups. Places like libraries also often have art groups and things like that, so another idea for you to explore. But I do find it makes such a difference by creating with others. You don't have to work in their sketchbooks, but just by being with them, they might spot something that you don't see. Whether that's on a reference that you're looking at online or whether that's in real life, it can encourage way more ideas and allow us to really unlock some new things to explore in our sketchbooks. Lastly, tip number 6, and I feel like I've left the biggest one for last, but that is mindset. Don't go into your sketchbooks thinking you're going to create masterpieces every time. The whole beauty of a sketchbook is if you don't like it, you can turn the page and start again. Often as artists, we hold ourselves to really high standards and we get really disappointed if it doesn't turn out how we want it to. Creating without that expectation in your head is really hard to let go of, but it's massively freeing, and that's really helped me unlock my work in my sketchbook. I go in with a sense of play and exploration, and I think that's really, really important. So I highly recommend looking at your mindset, and before you start, just go in with that idea that you're not necessarily going to create something perfect. You don't want to do that. You're just going to play around. It could start with just swatching or playing with your supplies and then develop into something that maybe is a piece on its own, but it doesn't have to. Just swatching and layering is a learning thing, and just having fun in your sketchbook is what it's all about. There's a reason why I called my book Sketchbook Joy, because I do think that there's more we can learn in our sketchbooks from just having fun than it is trying to create perfect art. Even when you're doing like master studies like I recommended, it doesn't have to match it perfectly for us to learn from. I really think going in with that play mindset is the biggest factor for unlocking your creativity, because it just lets you kind of tap into that childlike wonder again, like being a kid and just playing with our supplies. It doesn't have to be perfect for it to go on the fridge. It's just something that gives us joy and we had fun creating. Some of my sketchbook work does look quite neat and finished, but we're not necessarily aiming for that. I have had years and years of practice for building it up, but in my early days it never looked like that. So it's also important not to compare yourself. Try and see other people's art as inspiration rather than something to make you feel jealous of or that yours isn't good enough. Change that mindset and just see, oh, I really like that piece. I wish my work was like that. What can I take from that to try in my own work? So using it as a learning point rather than something that you're just never going to try. There's always different things that we can try and explore, and I think that's the beauty of an artist. I really think mindset is important when you're coming to your art, and I know it's tricky to change, but hopefully some of these tips have been helpful. I'd love to know your thoughts down below, so please do share any of your own ideas in the comments for if you've had a creative block and how you've got past it, or how you unlock your own creativity. A big thank you to my patrons. Their support allows me to create these free YouTube videos, so shout out to them and thank you for watching. I look forward to chatting to you all in the comments, and I will see you next Sunday in my new YouTube video. See you later.